Astraeos is officially ARK's biggest map. More than 3 times the size of the island, Scorched Earth and Extinction, including creatures from all story maps including Aberration, and delivered in a Greek mythology themed tour across dozens of lore-filled islands covering almost every type of ARK biome, which means resources too, home to arguably the best travelling mount and boasting more unique bosses to grind towards for unlocks and loot, and it's not even complete yet. Plan to include 2 more region updates later, including an expansive desert island. Astraeos has released its 3rd major update, and with it a much wider world to explore. So here's a guide to explain everything: spawn areas, resources, base locations, boss progression and server setup, because if looking for the best experience, looking especially at creature spawns, you'll want to host a server, and with a handy discount code in the description can get you running a server for a length of your choosing, making sure you've selected Astraeos DLC under map name with a handy new official server rates option should you wish to emulate a similar difficulty to the official grind, with a bunch of custom settings to customize for your own experience. Don't forget to name your server so you can find it, and let's find a spawn location. Currently there's 4 main islands to spawn on: Corinthos, Phokintos, Lemnokis and Throkis. As explained by the spawn difficulty, Throkis should be your last choice to start on, as well as all hard spawns, leaving you either Corinthos South or Lemnokis South to begin on. There's really no better spawn than Corinthos Southeast starting out though, making yourself a stone pick and heading to the camps at either 61.923.1 or 61.124.3 with tents full of boxes you can hack for metal picks, metal hatchets and crossbows before you can even unlock them. From there, you've got access to a handy teleport function to transport you across the map to the same beginner spawn regions, and in fact should, teleporting to Corinthos East then South, which will land you in view of one of the several carcass locations, giving you access to easy oil and spoiled meat for trank arrows. From there, teleport to Lemnokis Southeast then Southwest, which should land you roughly 600 meters south of one of the handful of veggie patches you can find on this map. This one located at 24.474.2, giving you the quickest, easiest access to all types of veg, as well as 2 convenient pre-built starter homes to simply throw up a door on and get you set to tame your first creature. Lucky for you, the best travelling mount in the entire game spawns in these plains too, as well as near most beginner spawns around the map. Trapping with some wooden billboards and using your recently looted crossbow, spoiled meat for trank arrows and veggies to tame, you've now got a mount to get literally anywhere on the map. Of course, you'll need some hide and metal to make a smithy and a saddle first, and Astraeos is very generous when it comes to metal. In fact, that much, along with obsidian and crystal, it'd be much harder to explain locations not to find them. But if following this guide by the letter, you'll find some nodes as you headed up to that veggie patch at 2672.2. Now you've got the best flyer that's not even a flyer in the game. So now just simply learn how to glide one properly and get farming drops. Astraeos is the most reward-giving maps when it comes to drops, owed to having no traditional white and green drops, so way more blue drops around that'll offer structure pieces and gear to get you on your feet quick, and likely all you'll be able to access right now unless you plan to power level to access better drops, and well, you may want to, because green drops are now level 90 endgame reward-giving drops for endgame saddles, kibble and even element. But that's where perhaps the single only downside of Astraeos comes in. With no dossier notes, it's not as easy to level here as other maps, but it makes up for it by offering many more alpha variants to kill for high XP, instead called astral variants, offered as either raptors, argents, megalodons, wolves, carnos, dinosuchus, mammoths, rexes, moses and tuzos, and all offering cave quality loot, with your first picks aiming at either raptors or wolves if planning to level this way. But you've got your loot, you've got your Meguana, and now time to find a proper base location, and Astraeos has more prime base locations than any other map, enough nearby resources for almost any location you can pick. The easy go-to are probably the pre-built mausoleums and temples, requiring little else than a gate to block up, and there's a bunch in mostly advantageous locations, well elevated with plenty of ground around. With in fact the last one on this list being a fan favourite, literally being the Peak of Olympus. Though fair enough, not probably pleasing the builders out there, but fear not, because there's dozens of giant flat locations to build on, with every location seemingly built with you in mind, from giant rocky vistas to secluded river banks, over snow peaks overlooking waterfall views, redwood dense rises and high rising plateaus, river islands, sunken alcoves, oil tycoon, mountain tops, remote island forests, lands of giants, Spartan pits of death reborn, civilizations, valley towering rises, cliff ends, oval overlooks, syntax skirts, Perseus peaks, pirate coves, lightwood views, war-torn temples, beach views, and several deserted islands. There's frankly something for everyone. Unless maybe you're PvP, because there's some debate on no cave being ideal, with at least some strong enough contenders in my opinion, but the natural go-to caves all PvPers run for, some can definitely be more stronger than others, and some boasting wealths of resources inside, with some being even more hidden than others. But there's definitely a handful of more difficult to reach areas to remain hidden if you want, whether it's out of the way, tucked behind waterfalls, or hidden in tight cracks. There's really no ideal suggestion, especially in a video showing locations, because the game is to be hidden, so frankly leave you to be creative about this and quiet about it and not share the base location, maybe not even pick any of these, right? But almost all of these locations, as said, are within reach of at least some metal, obsidian and crystal, with the only early to mid-game resource missing being paste, and don't worry, we'll cover all resources in a mo. Quick access to this is granted by running the large Beaver Dam River from 7.85.9 to 3.69.9, rewarding bucket loads, but taming yourself a Doedicurus and heading to the Maelstrom at 41.75.9 can find a small wealth farmed too. If looking for some pearls to add to early game, you can't do wrong by farming the Silica Pearl Cave or hand-picking black pearls at the volcano. But honestly, with Maguana Drop running, you'll be on your feet with enough resources and a sizable base in no time, enough to start aiming for the mid to late game progression. With your flying May Glider, your next step will probably be to start stealing wyvern eggs, and there's an island dedicated to fire, lightning and poison variants with plenty of easy to access nests, both outside and inside the cave. In fact, with a bit of Maguana gliding practice, it's possible to clear out every nest with a convenient underwater pool to dive through and swim out to safety, ready to grow your regular favourite Draconis. Working towards preparing yourself to kill any Astrals and the map's new mini bosses, as well as your first sea fighter, because, well, Maguanas, whilst quick in the sea, ain't no fighter, might see you pushing to tame some Dinosuchus just west of the Wyverns. But the go-to for late game is of course Karkas, right, with rotating spawns through both Gigas and the super rare Tech Giga, should you be lucky enough to find one. With a next suggestion working towards mantis taming with woolly rhino horns, just don't forget Gilly and bug repellent. Whatever you plan to tame, if it's a herbivore, you'll really want to aim for Archelons for algae production, almost always near jellyfish for biotoxin feeding, and if it's a carnivore you're taming, well, you'll want mutton, and Astraeos provides its very own sheep island, constantly rotating between Ovis and Equus, and almost always being a guarantee for easy mutton, which you might as well start taming to breed and chainsaw harvest for mass hide farming. Speaking of which, almost all resources have some of the best bulk resource harvesting locations in ARK. To overlook some of the obvious ones, such as taming a Fasola and get busy hitting rocks, slapping an oil rig down at one of the many locations on a dedicated island, or heading to the Aberration cave, which has almost every fertile region spawning aberrant creature, and popping a gas collector down there. To really get busy, you'll want to tame yourself both an anglerfish and a Dunkleo. The latter will see you farm alarming amounts of metal from specific nodes dotted all over the map, with one particular cave covered in metal at 3570.4. As well as mountains of stone, and not forgetting the same algae-looking trees like the ones in that Maelstrom, but all over, rewarding buckets of paste with crystal to farm and wood to slot cap from table coral. And with an angler, clams are absolutely everywhere undersea to farm in the thousands. But heading to 35.972.4 we'll find several black pearl clams with even more in the same sea cave mentioned earlier. Polly is an absolute doddle ode to a dedicated bee cave brimming with hives and all ready to be chainsawed for as much as you'll ever need, or failing that, chainsaw some carcinos in the maelstrom. Sap, you've now got the choice of popping sap taps in redwood trees or harvesting the light redwood trees at 48.9, 14.1, literally any tree there. Sulphur you can find plentiful throughout the Wyvern Cove, just be mindful of any breath attacks around you. Clay has its own purpose-fit area now able to handpick plenty if you plan to build an adobe base. With green gems found all over in the same Aberration cave mentioned prior, and blue crystallized sap substituting blue gems gained from any white barked live trees all over Thorokis. Red gems are a little harder to come by, with red crystallized sap gained from the off red dead vine trees found at 62.5, 70.5 or 63.6, 66.1, and that leaves plant X to be farmed from live plants at the small swamp at 26.6, 18.9, salt if you really need it from bones at 33.6, 11.5 and 30.2, 12.4, and rare flowers, silk and plant species Y farmed from the blue flowers at 28.7, 7.5 if, well, you plan to tame gachas, which, speaking of, you can bypass almost all of the above and simply make your own gacha resource farm by taming gachas found in select locations all over Lemnokis as well as the Aberration cave. So you're leveled, you've got all the resources you need and a base breeding creatures ready for late game. Your first stop should be Artifact Cave farming, specifically the Pack Artifact Cave on Thorokis, surprisingly allowing you to glide a Maguana straight in and out, and farming 4 or 5 cave drops or possibly dropping max armor, weapons or saddles, even unofficial. Once confident on a Maguana, head to the Hunter Artifact Cave for another 3 or 4 high boosted cave drops there too, and once owning a medium-sized cave runner such as a Barry, head to the Devera Artifact Cave for at least 1 cave drop to grant high-end saddles. If you tamed a Deinosuchus as recommended earlier or got a strong sea creature, head to the Brute Cave for possibly the best cave loot on the map, as well as a puzzle minigame to reach the artifact. Just don't forget to check the land areas where you'll find loot crate spawns too, which goes double for the Clever Cave, having loot drops both on land and undersea too. Leaving the massive artifact with less underwhelming loot, but ticking off every artifact needed to face the current map guardians. As mentioned earlier, be constantly on the lookout for green drops once level 94 element rewards that can sometimes give you up to 150 element, more than you'd get from even some boss guardians. But speaking of elements, Thorokis doubles as a mini Extinction with its own variant of corrupted creatures as well as unique takes on both OSDs and element veins. OSDs coming in beta, alpha, and more often than not legendary offerings, with you naturally needing a solid carcass squad to get defending and backing some impressive tech and traits loot, not forgetting being the only way to obtain a Maguana saddle BP. Element veins come in the same game, manageable on alpha with a strong enough carcass solo and rewarding more elements than you'll yield from most bosses. Just don't forget to use a high melee bred mantis with max picks buffed by a UT and maybe a Dinotherium as well, and a bell to push that melee even higher for large element runs. Trust me, the bell works. I didn't even know that was a thing until now. Not forgetting sea crates dotted all across the map for even more loot, though honestly not really as rewarding as some cave drops. Every Astral also rewarding a selection of high level armor, saddle and weapons depending on which you kill, and a new bonus reward if fighting the game's mini boss guardians. Seemingly a tough duo to beat initially, a well-timed few Deinosuchus gigabytes should see their health plummet. Well, unless it gets patched after this guide, with you maybe defaulting to Carcas or Gigas, but with each summon and defeat will reward you with again a selection of high-end saddles and gear, as well as a moderate amount of element. Leaving you now with the main map guardians to face, and you'll want to be prepared. Whilst technically being the second boss, Thodes the Widowmaker is your go-to for alpha first, just like its island counterpart Megapithecus, and offering the exact same tech unlock unlocks, but dramatically more element rewarded, up to 750 if beating on Alpha, requiring artifacts Brute, Pack and Devourer along with Megalodon Teeth, Therizino Claws, Megalania Toxins, Spinosaurs and Thyla Claws, and your very best boss fighters along with an understanding of how to do any damage at all, because whilst there's some argument for a solid Rex squad, Therizinos or even Dinotheriums, a tried and tested proven strategy by Gingerella unofficial is Dinosuchus. On Alpha, requiring 17, all with 124 cap saddles, 40k health and 800 plus melee, along with a high health buffing Uti again with a capped 124 saddle and at least 4k stam, and depending on your preference, either a ridden Daedon to heal and shoot from with a high damage shotgun, or as Gingerella suggested, a mate pair of Velos with again cap saddles, 4k stam and 700 plus melee to allow to shoot from at no ammo cost, because this monstrous Cyclops requires at least some form of projectile damage, firmly fixed at its eyeball to eventually submit it into a weakened state. Without this, you can pretty much say goodbye to anything you bring into the fight, with constant awareness of space to not get hit yourself and UT buffing throughout. Obviously, a lot of preparation to bag a giant amount of element as well as a trophy head, but not nearly as much of a worry as the next boss, because Natrix the Devious is perhaps the hardest boss in ARK to date, with possessing dismounting abilities, health drain from leech attacks, the threat of rabies and saddle bypassing damage to hit your creatures in the thousands per hit, requiring artifacts Hunter, Clever and Massive, as well as Argitalons, Sarcoskins, Sauropod Vertebrae and Titanoboa Venom, with yet again the best solution for official being offered by Gingerella to bring in Dinotheriums, being incredibly tanky herbivores with high melee resistance and melee buffing abilities, as well as being able to be healed by veggie cakes, making these an absolute perfect choice. On Alpha, requiring 18 elephants, with only one of those being male to take advantage of the buffs, all with cap saddles again, at least 50k health and 650 plus melee, with again a high health UT with a cap saddle and at least 4k stam, as well as a Daedon leveled in food and stacked with kibble, and at least 20 veggie cakes in each of your Dinotheriums, keeping the male Dinotherium and passive healing Daedon close to you to not take the heat off Medusa. A really underestimated challenging fight solo, but if successful will find the same unlocks as Alpha Broodmother, with up to 600 element rewarded, as well as the proudest trophy you can show off. But where's Dragon Unlocks, I hear you ask? Well, I guess that's coming with the next map update, but until then, if you really want to challenge yourself further, Astraeos has its very own King Titan, named Thanatos, who, just like the world spawn on Extinction, spawns for 1 hour every actual real-life day, and can spawn in either Gamma, Beta, or Alpha variants, apparently, with you needing to amass your best Dreadnoughtus army to really take down easily and reward the entire server with one of many temporary world buffs, or to pump those rates up and crowning you an experienced Greek warrior. I hope you enjoyed this. This was a big one. If you did, make sure to comment below and all that jazz. I'll try and keep timestamps for all of this. And until the next one, my name's Raasclark. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and as always,